The dog in a conquest called Christian, civilizing, imperial, glorious, or inevitable, depending upon which man is being asked to explain it and what he stands to gain from the explanation. As villages burn and people flee into forests, the dog feels quite certain that the person ahead of him is the thing to be pursued. He knows the scent. He knows the command. He knows that when the man holding the leash releases it, he is meant to run, and so he runs. The person ahead knows something different. The animal behind him is faster. It can follow him into the brush, find him in the darkness, and continue after the armored men have become tired. He may believe it to be a lion, a tiger, or something belonging less to the natural world than to the strangers who arrived from beyond it. The 16th century chronicler Bernal Diaz de Castillo records indigenous observers asking whether one such beast was a lion or a tiger, which we kept for the purpose of tearing the Indians to pieces. This is an extraordinary description, not because the animal was truly supernatural, but because the Spaniards had succeeded in making an ordinary creature appear as though it were. The dog runs, the person runs, and above them both stands the conqueror, the owner, trainer, paymaster, theologian, and builder of this entire arrangement. He selects the animal. He determines the target. He names the killing lawful. And indeed, to him, it may be lawful. It may be war. It may be punishment. It may even be evangelization. It is truly an extraordinary thing, the dog in the conquest. The Spanish did not invent military dogs in the Americas. European societies had bred dogs for guarding, hunting, pursuit, and war for centuries. They had appeared in campaigns against the Moors and in the conquest of the Canary Islands. Some wore thick protective coverings or coats of mail. Some were equipped with collars intended to protect the throat. The conquest of the Americas did not create this technology so much as it carried the technology across an ocean and discovered a population against whom it could be used with very few restraints. When Christopher Columbus departed on his second voyage in 1493, his expedition included 20 mastiffs and greyhounds. One official explanation was that the dogs might test unfamiliar food for poison. 20 large military animals transported across the Atlantic to taste fish. This is the sort of explanation empire often produces for itself, sufficiently innocent to be written down and sufficiently absurd to reveal what the writing is hiding. The crown spoke of settlement, conversion, and loving treatment, yet among the weapons, horses, livestock, and sacred objects were animals bred to chase whatever tried to escape. The expedition's suppliers understood what its loftier language preferred not to say. Forced labor, land seizure, and extraction would require coercion, and in the Caribbean, nearly everything would soon be running. The first recorded Spanish use of a European dog against indigenous people in the Americas occurred in Jamaica on May 5, 1494. Columbus's ships were in dire need of water and wood. The people on shore appeared hostile. The Spaniards answered with crossbows, then swords, and finally a dog, which pursued those who fled and inflicted what the account calls much harm. From this encounter came an assessment that would guide much of what followed. One dog was worth more than 10 men. The phrase reveals the animal's place in the expedition. The dog was not yet a pet or a mascot, but an investment measured against human soldiers. It could pass through terrain too dense for a horse, keep watch at night, keep a trail or hiding place, and pursue a person long after the soldier had exhausted his breath or courage. A sword could kill the person it reached. A dog could continue following. In March 1495, at the Battle of Vegal Real in Hispaniola, Columbus possessed approximately 200 soldiers, 25 horses, and 20 trained dogs. The horses and dogs were placed under Alonso de Ojeda, a veteran of the war in Granada. When the fighting intensified, the dogs were released. Bartolomé de las Casas, writing in condemnation of Spanish cruelty, described these animals as another weapon, yet more terrible and dreadful, 20 great hounds trained to seize their prey. Elsewhere, he claimed that the Spaniards taught and trained great greyhounds, dogs of exceeding fierceness, which, upon merely seeing an Indian, would tear him to pieces in the time it took to recite the creed. The creed is a strange measurement for violence. It places the sacred and the sadistic inside the same unit of time. The Christian recites his profession of faith. The animal completes the work assigned to it. Before the prayer is finished, according to Las Casas, the person is gone. Las Casas also claimed that within a single hour, each dog would tear 100 Indians to pieces. That number should not be accepted simply because it is horrifying. Early chronicles contain exaggeration, polemic, political theater, and arithmetic enlarged either for glory or condemnation. Las Casas wished to awaken the conscience of Spain, and like many moral witnesses, he understood the uses of an unforgettable figure. But uncertainty about the number is not uncertainty about the practice. We need not choose between believing that each dog killed exactly 100 people and believe that no dogs were used at all. The chroniclers disagree in scale and motive, but the animals recur across eyewitness testimony, military accounts, legal records, and indigenous descriptions. The arithmetic may be doubtful, the arrangement is not. The Spaniards saw what the dogs could do in battle and what the idea of them could do before battle. A soldier might occupy one place, a rumor could occupy a country. They had acquired a weapon that could bite and a story that could travel. The dogs were useful in combat, but combat alone cannot explain them. Once the animals had been trained to pursue human beings, the frontier between warfare, punishment, and amusement became remarkably easy for their owners to cross. The Spanish called one practice the Montiera Infernal, the Infernal Chase. This was the conversion of a familiar aristocratic hunt into a hunt for people. Fugitives escaping mines or plantations could be tracked through forests. Captured leaders could be threatened before their communities. Prisoners could be placed before the animals as punishment, instruction, or spectacle. Young dogs learned what sort of body they were permitted to attack. Those forced to watch learned what resistance might cost. Las Casas writes, "I myself beheld the Spaniards loose their dogs upon the Indians, to set upon them and rend them limb from limb." In another passage, he says, "Others they cast before savage dogs, which devoured them and tore their bodies asunder." These are descriptions of a procedure. The human is placed, the dog is loosed, violence is observed. Everyone occupies an assigned position. The human hunt operated upon two bodies at once. It injured or killed the person caught, but also entered the mind of everyone who escaped. In Cuba, groups hiding in thickets reportedly became paralyzed with fear upon hearing packs nearby. The barking performed political labor. The dog need not reach every fugitive if its reputation precedes itself and makes the fugitive surrender first. Las Casas understood this purpose plainly. He wrote that they gave men and women unto the dogs, that the beasts might be made more savage, and that greater terror might be struck into the islands when they saw their people torn apart. The sentence describes two populations being trained at once. The dogs are taught savagery. The witnesses are taught fear. One body becomes an instrument, another an example, and the conqueror benefits from both. The dog cannot understand any of this. It cannot know that the person before it has been classified as rebellious, pagan, or expendable. It cannot comprehend the mine, the encomienda, the crown, or the economy of forced labor. It knows the hand, the leash, and the command. The political meanings exist above it. This is conquest in one of its most efficient forms. It need not destroy every opponent, only cultivate a terror so believable that destruction no longer needs to be demonstrated each time. The dogs therefore became more than dogs. They became performances of Spanish power. They were named, they were armored, they received shares of plunder. Their wages, naturally, passed to the men who owned them. Spain did not merely unleash the dogs, Spain placed them onto a payroll. Of these animals, none became more famous than Becerillo, whose name means little bull calf. His origin is uncertain. He may have come from kennels associated with Diego Columbus or from trainers connected to Juan Ponce de Leon. By the time he appeared in Puerto Rico, he reportedly carried scars from arrows. Descriptions gave him a reddish or brown coat, a long black muzzle, dark markings around the eyes, and a heavy body less elegant than the word greyhound might suggest. Becerrillo belonged to Ponce de Leon, but often served under Diego de Salazar, was said to distinguish submission from resistance. Gonzalo Fernandez de Oviedo described the practice in remarkably calm terms. Should the Indian submit, the dog would take him gently by the hand, but should he offer resistance, the beast would tear him to pieces. This is more disturbing than uncomplicated ferocity. The dog was not merely sent into chaos to attack whatever moved. Violence had rules. Submission produced one behavior, resistance another. The animal reproduced, in miniature, the political logic of conquest. Obey and perhaps live. Resist and become the demonstration by which obedience is taught. The Spaniards prized Becerillo accordingly. He wore a fine collar and a padded protective cloak. He received 1.5 times a crossbowman's pay, with portions of captured gold, food, enslaved people, and other plunder. Gold possesses very little value to a dog. The rewards went to the owner. The animal received the privilege of being sent again into danger. The most revealing story about Becerrillo, however, concerns the person he refused to kill. Near Capara, Salazar's men had subdued a group of indigenous people and were waiting for Ponce de Leon. Boredom settled over the camp, which in the hands of cruel men can become more dangerous than anger. Salazar summoned an elderly woman, placed a scrap of paper in her hands, and ordered her to deliver the supposed message to the governor. If she refused, he said, she would be given to the dogs. She accepted. After she had walked some distance, the soldiers released Becerillo. They expected entertainment. The woman heard the animal behind her, turned, fell to her knees, and raised the paper. "Oh, my lord dog," she pleaded, "do me no harm." Becerillo stopped. He approached her, smelled the paper, examined her, and then, according to the story, lifted his leg, urinated upon her, and allowed her to return alive. The soldiers attempted to stage a comedy of terror. The dog ruined the performance by displaying restraint. When Ponce de Leon heard what happened, he ordered the woman released, declaring that the compassion of a dog should not outshine that of a Christian. But it already had. For one brief and grotesque moment, the most Christian creature in the Spanish camp was the animal they had trained to kill. Becerillo died in 1514 during an attack on the estate of Sancho de Arango. Indigenous fighters seized a Spanish captain and attempted to carry him toward a canoe. Becerillo charged, drove the men into the water, and swam after them. There he was struck by poisoned arrows. The dog reportedly killed the man who had shot him and then returned to shore, revealing the wound to the Spaniards as though asking for help. His handlers burned the injury with fire in an attempt to destroy the poison. It did not save him. The Spaniards buried Becerillo secretly because his death threatened something more useful than his living body. To those who feared him, he had become an almost indestructible servant of the invaders. If that creature could be killed, perhaps the men behind him could be killed as well. The body could be buried, the rumor had to remain alive. By the time Hernan Cortez advanced toward Tenochtitlan, the dogs no longer had to arrive before their reputation. Messengers sent by Montezuma observed the Spanish camp, where Cortez staged a display of military power so that the visitors' painters could record what they saw. Their descriptions presented long-bodied dogs with hollow stomachs, flattened ears, spotted coats, enormous hanging mouths, and eyes that seemed to throw sparks. The artists were not composing a natural history of European breeds. They were reporting a weapon. The people of Mexico knew of the mutts. The distinction was not between familiarity and childish fear, but between a domestic animal and a military system constructed around that said animal. The Spanish had bred, transported, trained, armored, rewarded, and mythologized these dogs. They had placed a familiar creature within an arrangement recognizable only after one had suffered from it. A frightening animal might guard a camp. An animal believed to be supernatural might guard an empire. This is why names, publicized exploits, and hidden deaths mattered. The best war dog was not simply the one that killed the most. It was the dog whose name arrived first and whose supposedly invincibility made resistance appear futile. The conquest did not require the dogs to be demons. It required the people to believe they were. There is a temptation to become fascinated by these hounds. Their stories possess the terrible neatness of folklore. Human suffering disappears into numbers, 100 people in an hour, villages frightened into submission, unnamed prisoners placed before unnamed animals. And so the title calls them demonic dogs, but there is no demonic breed. Becerillo did not understand Spain. The dogs at Vegal Real possessed no theology of conquest and no dream of planting a flag beside a foreign ocean. They knew only what had been made immediate: the hand, the voice, the target, the reward. Oviedo defined being given to the dogs as to cause those beasts to devour or slay a man, tearing the Indian's body into pieces. Even the grammar is revealing. The beasts devour, but someone causes them to devour. The dog appears as the visible author of the wound, while the human decision that produced the wound attempts to stand one step back. The conqueror could then blame the animal's nature. The dog's usefulness depended upon training. An indiscriminate animal could not safely live among Spanish soldiers. The desired dog was obedient toward its owner and merciless toward designated prey. Its aggression was not merely discovered, it was organized. The dog supplied the teeth, the human being supplied the category of person into whom those teeth could be sunk. The savagery did not rise from some uniquely evil animal. It descended from a political order that wanted pursuit, punishment, forced labor, territory, spectacle, and fear, and discovered the dog could serve them all. The animal became savage in the particular manner conquest required. Obedience was rewarded. Restraint was conditional. Violence became routine. The dogs did what had been ironed into them. Within the world their owners constructed, they behaved reasonably. Run when released, stop when commanded, return when called. They could not imagine a life outside this arrangement because no one had allowed them one. The people who trained them could imagine otherwise. They chose the arrangement anyway. The dogs deserve neither legend nor damnation. They were animals made into instruments and then blamed, praised, armored, paid, and remembered as though they had authored the imperial purposes imposed upon them. The word demonic belongs somewhere in this history, certainly. I am simply not sure it belongs to the dogs.